Hello and welcome to my channel, I Want to Lose Gaming. In today's video, we'll be having a DPS showdown between the Electro Archon, the Archon of disliking Archons, and the Cryo Amber Archon. So you might be shocked to see the contestants in this video, and I don't blame you. Raiden is a support, so why is she here against one of the best DPS characters and against one of the quote-unquote worst DPS characters in the game? Well, first of all, I blame you guys, because you all overwhelmingly voted for the Archon disliking Keqing to compete against one of her least favorite entities, an Archon. And that is the perfect segue to introduce our electric contestants. But before that, I've seen a massive increase in interest for Genshin Impact content creation, and now is the perfect time for today's brand new sponsor, Wondershare Filmora. Wondershare Filmora is perfect for both beginners and even expert editors like myself, and includes preset templates like effects, filters, transitions, and even tons of royalty-free music. The download link will be in the description below as well as the pinned comment. There's a reason why Wondershare Filmora has been downloaded over 50 million times worldwide, and that's because of all the awesome videos that have been made with it. Filmora has just released the newest version, V10.5, which includes new features such as auto reframe, AR stickers, and even an AI portrait. Here we have the majestic Raiden Shogun standing on a rock. And with the power of AI portrait, it took me literally seconds to have a transparent background Raiden that I can pop into any other scene, like this one. Next, if you're getting tired of seeing the same boring Genshin nuke combo over and over, why not spice it up with these awesome special effects? Wham, whoosh, pow pow, zap. And now you've got the coolest Raiden nuke video on YouTube. So if you want to get into content creation and need a simple and intuitive software to start, go smash that link in the description below. Wondershare Filmora X is 100% free to try and free to download. There's also a back to school special where you can get a massive 42% discount, valid until September 30th. Go check out Wondershare Filmora X by clicking that link in the description below. Ever since her introduction to the story as a doubter of the gods and a workaholic, Keqing has been around since day one of Genshin Impact's release. Many a shrimp re-rolled over and over to start their journey through Teyvat with this cat-eared Yuheng of the Liyue Qixing. My Keqing has a couple builds throughout this video. The first is for the overworld. She's using a Refinement 5 Mist Splitter's Reflection, and she's using 2-piece Thundering Fury and 2-piece Gladiators. Throughout the overworld, I'm using 20% crit rate food for her, because by now a true Keqing main that has been farming artifacts for her since day one is going to have pretty much perfect artifacts. With the crit rate food and pyro resonance, my Keqing is at 98% of her damage potential. For Abyss, since without the crit rate food, my Keqing's crit ratio is an absolute dumpster fire, my Jade Cutter Keqing does quite a bit more average damage, so Keqing will be using that in the Abyss. Now one might take a bird's eye view of the Raiden Shogun and think that she's a support. However, people often overlook her incredible burst damage. Raiden Shogun is like a generator. You charge her up with a bunch of running hamsters, aka her teammates, and then she's able to unleash all that stored power onto her opponents while also charging up her hamsters. And while Raiden does support her team, she also happens to do a ton of damage while doing so. It goes without saying that Raiden's place in the current meta is a huge question mark, but maybe you'll be shocked to see the results in this video. My Raiden is using the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fates. Now, I must admit that I use an attack percent build for most of the overworld showcases, but after I got an upgrade to my energy recharge timepiece, I swapped back to an energy recharge build. Either way, both builds do nearly the exact same amount of damage. With Pyro Resonance, my Raiden's burst is currently at 79% damage potential. I also use a higher crit damage build for one of the showcases, as well as Abyss 12. Next we have the GOAT, greatest of all time, Ganyu. And unlike her co-worker Keqing, who hates Archons, Ganyu demonstrates much adoration for the Geo Archon, Rex Lapis, making her an Archon liker. My Ganyu is using the Wanderer's Troop, and with Cryo and Geo Resonance, she's at 83% of her damage potential. While she does use other combinations of resonances at certain times, she's always around 80-ish% of her damage potential. Now for everyone's favorite part of the video, the disclaimers. As usual, these runs are simply my best attempt at them in a reasonable amount of time. I do each of these runs multiple times and simply pick the best time. There are likely other showcases of these characters out there that are faster than my times. All these times can be improved. Also, this does not mean character A is better than character B, but simply here to serve as a single anecdote for how these characters compare to each other at my levels of investment and my levels of skill. Get ready to say, "Oh my goodness," as we annihilate the local fauna in Teyvat, and even set a world record Abyss 12 time in this DPS Showdown. Starting off with everyone's favorite volunteer to electrocute and freeze to death, we have the Cryo and Pyro Regisvines. What just happened? Well, for a character that can hit 1 million damage with no reactions, doing 185,000 damage with the initial slash of her burst didn't even require a crit damage build. Sadly, our poor plant friend didn't even have time to call its family before it was sentenced to the electric chair. You may have noticed that this clip is from my Ayaka vs Ganyu DPS Showdown. And yeah, barring a couple runs where I did manage to improve my Ganyu times, you're going to see some of those clips. Since Ganyu cannot one-shot the Pyro Regisvine without reactions, she instead has to 3-shot it. Still an impressively fast disposal of some freezer burnt lettuce. As for Keqing, well, her damage is not nearly as bursty as Raiden's or Constellation 6 Ganyu, but she's still able to quickly take out our poor plant friend before it could call its friends and family in a mere 5.8 seconds. Next we have a dragon who really needs to see a dermatologist, Dvalin. By using a crit damage build, Raiden was able to one-shot Dvalin's Zit after a couple of attempts, by building up some additional resolve prior to knocking Dvalin down. An interesting thing to note is that Raiden's resolve is reset to 0 when entering a domain, so she's at a bit of a disadvantage for when she cannot quickly build up her resolve. In Dvalin's case, there's plenty of time to build up the resolve needed for that necessary surge in power. This fight has historically been a good fight for Ganyu, since she does not have the need to climb up Dvalin's neck. Despite that though, Constellation 6 is really awkward to use against Dvalin, which is where a lot of Ganyu's explosive power comes from. Nonetheless, Dvalin took a mere 7.5 seconds for our favorite goat. As for Keqing, well, battery late than never. Thanks to her elemental skill, Keqing can get up to the Zit much more quickly than most of her fellow melee peers. This fight took her 12.2 seconds, long enough to make a sandwich, but not long enough to eat it too. Now we have a harmless sleeping giant rock frog. Seriously, I don't understand why we bother it all the time. Despite that, I'll be bothering it a lot. Raiden's burst really hurts. If something can be taken out in a single burst window, then Raiden is going to perform shockingly well. Granted, this wouldn't be possible for my Raiden without a bunch of pre-built resolve, but hey, we will use every reasonable advantage of a character's kit in these DPS showdowns. Speaking of using reasonable benefits for a character, we do that with Ganyu, by queuing up both her burst and a free charge shot. While Ganyu's damage is impressive, it's not nearly as bursty as Raiden's burst. Fast and steady almost wins the race, as Ganyu chucks her arrows at the Primo Geo Vishap every couple of seconds to end up with an impressive 13.2 seconds. I'm starting to understand why Keqing dislikes Archons so much. It's probably because they're all completely broken in comparison to her. Well, at least Keqing has some of the best work ethic in Teyvat, because she is just poking and prodding our favorite giant rock frog until it dies from the irritation. After what is deemed by Raiden as an eternity, Keqing was able to poke our favorite giant rock frog into the afterlife in 22.1 seconds. Next we have the only actual willing volunteer in Teyvat, Masanori. I learned something new about Masanori here. If you do enough damage before he even manages to do his first attack, he'll immediately shift into his second form. With how quickly he transitions, Raiden was able to dispose of both his forms in a single secret art, the Blade of the Booba. This clocked in at a personal record of 8.8 seconds. I tried many times with Ganyu to burst down Masanori's first form prior to him doing an attack, but could never do enough damage in time. So I ended up with this strategy, which saved her Constellation 6s to take out his second form as fast as I could. Ganyu managed to mercilessly gun down our only willing volunteer, Masanori. Ah yes, small cat-eared hair girl versus 15-foot tall hulking armored samurai. What can go wrong? It's losing this DPS race to an Archon and an Archon liker. Keqing is not able to bypass the first attack cycle of Masanori. So while we watch a giant samurai man spin around, we can also go take a nap and then come back, because then and only then will Masanori throw in the towel after an agonizingly long 23.2 seconds of being poked by a small cat-eared haired girl. I always found it interesting that the Perpetual Lego Array drops Cryo Ascension materials. I guess it's not powered by Electro, but instead by Cryo? Anyway, the Perpetual Lego Array has the unique property of essentially having 3 phases. Sadly, unlike Ayaka, Raiden isn't able to take out the Lego boss's first form prior to its first attack cycle. So despite the stunningly bad luck with crits here, it didn't really matter at all, since Raiden still took it down prior to its second attack cycle. Fortunately, Raiden is able to easily get her burst back up in time for a quick round 2 against the add-on and the weakened core. As for a residential Archon disliker, there's no conceivable way for her to solo take out the first form of the Perpetual Lego Array prior to its first attack cycle. As such, she needs to pray for the proper RNG to have 2 quick attacks from her Lego friend. Because of the way this boss works, most of the times fall into a few different ranges. In Keqing's case, her time fell into the 2 attack cycle time range. Ganyu was very similar to Raiden in this case because she also cannot take out the first form prior to its first attack cycle, and thus needs to wait for the first attack cycle of the Perpetual Lego Array to end. And now for the final volunteer in every DPS Showdown, Abyss 12. For this Abyss 12 Showdown, Keqing and Raiden are using the exact same supports. As I mentioned earlier, my Keqing does more damage with the Jade Cutter in this situation thanks to the crit rate. Bennett's, Kazuha's, and Sara's builds are all the same across both teams. So why was Raiden able to convincingly dominate 12-1-1? It's actually thanks to her elemental skill, applying Electro reliably for Kazuha to swirl on all 3 Stooges, and this allowed Sara to take them all out, after which Raiden was able to cleanly one-shot the next 2 samurai. By using Raiden's burst to take out the two mid-churls, Raiden could conserve her support's bursts for the next wave, and by utilizing all the support's bursts, they are able to break through the Abyss Mage's shield, and thus allow the Raiden Shogun to finish them off with her burst. This run is the closest run for our favorite Archon disliker. By taking matters into her own hands, and also thanks to Bennett's Constellation 6, Keqing is able to do more charge attack damage to the Electro Lava Troll than with her Electro attacks. Afterwards, there's simply a naked Abyss Mage all alone in the corner that gets horrifically impaled by Keqing's lightning stiletto. For Raiden, the best use of her kit that I found is to one-shot the second wave of small robots. As such, by using her supports and her elemental skill damage, Raiden's team is able to clear out the first robot, allowing Raiden to swipe right and clean out the screen. Keqing doesn't provide nearly as much supporting damage to her team and needs to do the dirty work herself, but after a few attacks from her, this opens her up to be able to use her burst versus the second wave of robots, and not really do that much damage to them. Well, this is the best rotation I could come up with, and although it managed to easily clear out the chamber, it was noticeably slower than Raiden's run. So now that we've seen the previous non-optimal usage of Raiden as the main DPS in Abyss 12, what if we used Raiden in a better team for her? Let's take this team of Raiden, Bennett, Venti, and Eula for an electric adventure into Abyss 12. What do you call a Eula and a Raiden operating a train? A superconductor. Get it? Because a train operator is a conductor, and in Genshin Impact they use superconduct together. Anyway, as we can see, these two are an insane combo. They have the ability to one-shot 2 consecutive waves consistently and quickly, and there are 2 to 3 seconds that can be shaved off of my run. But this run truly sparked my passion for speedrunning with the Raiden Shogun, and demonstrates that we have a new viable character to speedrun with. Now really quickly, you may have noticed that Ganyu is missing from the Abyss 12 showcase so far, but I'd like to defer you to Alyssa's Abyss 12 top half gauntlet run. For all intents and purposes, both Raiden and Ganyu are 2 of the best characters for speedrunning the current top half of Abyss 12. As always, Alyssa is one of the best Ganyu players in the world, and I highly recommend checking out his channel for top tier Ganyu play when you have the chance. A link to his channel will be in the description below. As for Keqing, well, she's had some representation in some Chinese speedruns for full no reset abyss clears. The recent indirect buffs to Keqing through the Mist Splitter and Sara have helped Keqing tremendously, and while I believe that there are better options for peak speedrunning potential than Keqing, it goes without saying that any character can succeed to a certain degree if you try hard enough. So now that this DPS Showdown is coming to an end, here is my personal assessment of these characters. When it comes to Ganyu vs Raiden, at the levels of investment that I have into these characters, they are two of the best damage dealers in the entire game, despite Raiden's label as a support character. Raiden's burst damage and sparkly slashy slash damage is insanely powerful, being able to provide huge burst damage either right out of the gate or extend her damage through her sword slashes. Meanwhile, Ganyu's explosive instant double charge shots that are meltable and persistent damage after that have proven their power time and time again ever since her release. However, Raiden without Constellations 2 and 3 is significantly weaker, while Ganyu at Constellation 0, although she's missing that explosive damage for the first few seconds, she still outputs super powerful charge shots. But Ganyu does need her Constellation 6 to get her full speedrunning potential out, whereas Raiden only needs her Constellation 3. As for Keqing, honestly she was definitely out of her league here, but her hardworking nature still allowed her to succeed. Also, if we rewind a bit to my 105% damage potential Diluc from my Yoimiya vs Diluc vs Hu Tao video, we can see that Keqing outperformed his times across the board. I'd attribute this partly to both the Mist Splitter as well as Keqing's inability to perform damage amplification reactions such as Vaporize and Melt. And in a vacuum, Keqing murdering most of this content in the game so quickly is still very remarkable, just not quite as remarkable as the Electro, Archon, and the Goat. So really quickly, I do post preview clips and chat with my audience in my Discord, discord.gg/IWTL, short for I Win to Lose, so be sure to check it out. The link to that will also be in the description below. Also, huge thanks to our sponsor today, Wondershare Filmora. You can support my channel by simply smashing that link in the description below or in the pinned comment. Seriously, just go smash that link and you'll see more content like this from me. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos, ranging from Caesar showcases, DPS Showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.